And I think in life, obviously faith is big, but what makes you, I would say, what makes life happy, fun, interesting, and ultimately profitable is the number of quality relationships you can foster. Okay. And, the good Lord puts people in your path sometimes, and you don't realize why they were put there until later.
Hello to another episode of Anchoring Hope, when we are shining the light during these last days by interviewing very, very good people of God, men of God, women of God that are changing this world for a better place with their organizations, with their personal lives. And today we have with us, it's my privilege to introduce Chris Jacob. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Chris, for the audience, can you give me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Full name is Christopher John Jacob. I go by Chris. And what I do for a living, initially in my career, which started back in 1984, I started in insurance and kind of transitioned into, a full scale wealth management of insurance, investments, and things of that nature. But I actually sold my practice in 2020 to a junior associate of mine. And somehow I now find myself in the software business, and that me and a partner of mine in New York, I live in Colorado, we together, him being the brains behind the operation, me being the impetus and kind of the advisor test case on this, created and got a patent for a predictive spreadsheet software program we call Reprodict. And we got the patent back in October of 23. And that's where I spend most of my time now, is talking to advisors and to what are called insurance marketing organizations on how the software works and how it can help their advisors.
So what does the algorithm does? It does predictive analysis of pricing points or on stocks?
Now, here's what, for financial advisors, especially those who are, I'd say, insurance centric, although it doesn't have to be insurance. You run a company illustration, for instance, and it shows, comes out, has the output of premiums, the death benefit, the cash value, and if it's for retirement, what the income coming is down the road. And let's just say the advisor runs this for $50,000 a year for 10 years. And in 20 years, it shows income coming out of $120,000 in the form of policy loans. Well, invariably, when that advisor is sitting in front of that client, they say, well, what would it look like if I did it for $35,000? Okay, let me go back to the computer and run it, or we'll get together next week and run it. Or, the guy could say, or gal, hey, that income coming out, what would that take for me to have $200,000 of income? And the only way to do that in the past was to go back into the company software. Yeah, it's easy to put in the premium. You really can't reverse engineer it for what it would take to provide a certain level of income. Well, in about a nanosecond, what happens is you feed the original illustration in, and whatever change that person wants to see, if they want to change the 50 to a 35, you change the premium in just one cell to 35, hit predict, and just like that, it creates a brand new spreadsheet, what's tantamount to an insurance illustration, which is 99% accurate as if you were to go back and run the company software, which would take you 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a game changer. And the other thing is, more information than you need to know, but the pain point for a lot of insurance reps, if they've sold a policy and it's 5 years down the road, they want to do a review with the client, they have to go to the insurance company, and I know this sounds antiquated based upon the times we live in, and request what's called an in-force illustration, meaning, okay, this was the original illustration, but what have we achieved now? What does that look like going forward? Those things can take 2 weeks to get, and when you get them, they're invariably wrong. and they're based upon all the new rules and regs that exist now on projecting values. So with this Reprodict, you can upload the original illustration, and let's say in year 4 it was going to show cash value. The original illustration showed cash value of $100,000, but instead the cash value is $85,000. You can just put that 85 in there, hit predict, and now you have a prediction based upon the original illustration and the current values. So it gives you the opportunity to have a review with the client that you'd have to say, I'm sorry, you'll have to wait 2 weeks for me to order that.
That's amazing. So you're really revolutionizing the way insurance agents are doing their work.
It really is. And everybody who sees it's like, I can't believe this. This is industry changing. We're just starting. But if anybody out there wants to see it, it's called Reprodict, and you can go to reprodict.ai. And it also has associated with it what we call an AI whiteboard. You can upload any document, and whether it's an insurance illustration or some sort of specific spreadsheet, and you can ask the AI any question about that spreadsheet, and it will generate it, or will generate the answer immediately. Because some of these insurance illustrations are, for instance, like 52 pages long. They have all these different indexing strategies. You can just say, in 5 paragraphs or less, please explain the index strategies available. Boom, you get it. So
it's crazy what AI is doing, and it's amazing that you're at the forefront of that. I mean, from becoming a tech entrepreneur, from having a wealth management company is very different.
It's complete. But what it's let me do is view this thing from the advisor perspective. Whereas my partner, started out life as an attorney. He's more of a financial inventor, and he's not sat in the advisor seat before. But I'm the one can say, hey, if it could do this, that would be great. And really, once we got the patent, he started to. His name's Bob Strauss. He started to, let's put it this way, just create with impunity, because he was always worried about the fact that in the past people have stolen his ideas, but you can't do that now that we got the patent.
That's wonderful. And once you have a patent, also your evaluation goes multiples, right? Because now the government believes in you.
Yeah. Well, if you ever watch Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful always asks, do you have a patent on this? That's his number one question.
Yeah. It's for the people that are listening to this, there's no better way for you not only to protect your IP, but also to generate value in your company than go in and get a patent, right?
Yeah, that's kind of funny you say the IP, because I was in strategic coach for years, and Dan Sullivan had a strategic coach offered this new class of IP, intellectual property, and I took the class, and this is prior to the creation of the software, and I came to Bob and I said, listen, we've got tons of intellectual property, and with everything you've done, there's got to be something that we can get patented. So he had a eureka moment the next day. He says, I get all my good ideas in the shower. And this is when he came up with this idea for Reprodict. And I think he was up 20 hours a day for about the next 6 months working with the software engineers in order to get the beta version of this thing. But
that's amazing. Wow, congratulations. Now tell me, Chris, what motivates you? I mean, you sold your first business. You are successful. What keeps you going? Wow, why another company?
I took a course one time to, basically say, why do you exist on this earth? Okay. I exist to help others, boom. So I exist to help others provide security, and how can I do that en masse? Yeah, when I was a financial advisor, I could do that, but I feel that I can have even more reach with this in helping advisors help their clients. So that's one of the things that keeps me going. And you ever heard those stages of life, David? Desire, perspire, on fire, retire and expire. Okay, I don't necessarily want to do the retire and expire thing. You know, I want to have purpose and meaning, and yeah, the money's one thing, but I contend you got to kind of like what you do. And as our good friend Dan Sullivan says, find something that fascinates and motivates you for the rest of your life. Where, you know, I'll be 64 in August, but I truly believe, you know, the years ahead hold more promise than the years behind. Where most people right now are just looking at, like my brother just retired. He retired from Verizon. We had a retirement party for him. He retired at 62. Good for him. And, you know, but he doesn't have anything now that he is pursuing that, if you will, has purpose. Of course, he's taking care of his family, and he's got a special needs child, which he's been doing now all the time. But, you know, I don't want to retire and expire. And if you look up the definition of retire in the dictionary, it says to remove from useful service.
It's horrible.
Who wants to do that? You know,
It's horrible.
no, and I mean, they talk. The other reason is, you know, I'm here in Colorado. I got a beautiful view. I'm originally from St. Louis. We moved out here a couple years ago to be closer to our kids, because 2 of my 3 kids live out here. 4 of my 5 grandkids live out here. And we live up in Silverthorne. It's 9,000 foot. I'm looking out on snow right now, as a matter of fact, as we sit here at the end of April. But just amazing that, you know, I've got the ability to have relationships with people all over the country. And I think in life, obviously faith is big, but what makes you, I would say, what makes life happy, fun, interesting, and ultimately profitable is the number of quality relationships you can foster. Okay. And, you know, the good Lord puts people in your path sometimes, and you don't realize why they were put there until later, you know? So I've, through this process of becoming more in the software for the financial advisors, those financial advisors who in the past would have viewed me, you know, as basically competition of I keep referring to Dan Sullivan, but Dan Sullivan says, you know, you got something that is a game changer when your past competitors become your clients, you know?
It's amazing.
It's though that's what's happening here. You know, it really is.
And, you know, Chris, you nailed it. I mean, we were sent to earth by God with a purpose. And if you look at the Bible, they asked Jesus, out of all the commandments, what is the most important commandment? And the Lord said, love your God with all your soul, all your might, all your strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that goes exactly in line to what you're doing, because it's beyond yourself, right? When you say that retirement is basically putting yourself out of commission of doing good, productive work, that means you stop loving your neighbor. That means whatever potential, whatever value you have, you no longer are going to use to bless somebody else. You're just going to keep it to yourself. And you know, I don't know if you have seen the statistic, but they're horrible, especially for males. Males that retire and they are healthy. Within 5 years, they are dead.
Yep. Well, it also comes back, David, the master who left and gave each one of the lords, if you will, money, and the one guy buried it. The one guy got a small return. The other one invested it, got a much greater return. You know, do you really want to bury your treasure? And like you said, each one of us has our special, unique abilities, and to just pull that from the world, you know, you're depriving the world of what you can do for them. And, you know, in my financial planning practice, a lot of it was focused around charitable tax planning, where I would tell people, you know, look, if you're successful in this country, part of your money and we'll call it social capital. Part of your money is going to go back to society for the common good. And how does it go back to society? One of two ways: tax or gift, and you get to decide. And we're not saying one is good versus evil, but just make a conscious decision as to what you want to happen with that money. And then we would show them, set up properly with planning. You can still provide to your family, actually be better off, leave more wealth to the next generation, and the money that otherwise would have gone out the door in taxes goes to your favorite charitable organizations and causes that you care about.
Yeah, love your neighbors, you love yourself. I've seen so many people retire wasting their life playing golf. I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing golf once in a while, but don't make as your end of life a strategic plan. That's horrible. My grandfather, he was probably one of the best persons I ever known in my life. His spirituality was through the roof. He was a charismatic Catholic. And he died, I think he was about 83 years old. He never stopped working, but he changed his lifestyle, right? So once he became about 70, he was a chartered accountant. So he will just take a few clients where he could have maximum value. So he would have more time for his faith. And you know how he died? On the way to church.
Oh my
God. He would actually walk to the church to exercise some on Sundays, and he was on his way to church where he had his heart attack. And it's beautiful. And and the extra money he did, he blessed other people with it. He traveled because he actually, instead of being an employee like he was, he became an independent consultant. So he had the freedom of time and the freedom of choosing who he had value to. And then he also had the freedom of faith. So he had a beautiful life, and he never retired.
No, again, retire and expire. Don't do that. I mean, what does Dan talk about? Freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, and freedom of purpose is if you go about life. I happen to be an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. What I love his saying, what is an entrepreneur? Somebody who has a vast amount of wisdom and even greater amount of ignorance. Okay. That's what you need to start a business for sure. And somebody who lives in a constant state of fear. And that's the problem that you get. I think a lot of people get, including myself. I like to say everybody's broke, just on different levels, because you start out here. For instance, when I came out of college, I thought, if I could just make X, oh my God, everything would be great. Then you make X and it's like, double X isn't where it is. It's triple X. Then you make triple X. No, that isn't it. It's got to be this. And there's that financial wealth divide that some people never get over, that it's always just one more deal. I need this much more money in my account, and then I can be happy, and then I can be stress-free. That's not what gets it.
No, and it never. And actually, I've known literally billionaires that are still in that rat race, because people think the rat race is just going to a job every single day of our life. No, there is the entrepreneurial rat race, and you just described it. It's, if I make it to this level economically, then I'm going to be set free, right? I'm going to be stress-free. That's an illusion. And people that figure out that that's a prison, then you stop loving money. Because actually, I read this today in the Bible. I think it's 1 Timothy chapter 6 says, the love of money is the root of all evil. It doesn't say that money is the root of all evil.
Oh, I know, it's the love of.
Yeah. The love of, right?
Well, let's face it, if God didn't want us to have money, we wouldn't have had the Good Samaritan story, right? Who took care of that beggar on the street? How did he do that? He had money to help that person out.
Or the parable with the talents that you just mentioned, right? Like, he wants us to actually even invest, right? But the thing is, where are you putting your hopes on? On your wealth or on Jesus Christ? That's the main difference. Who is your God? Who's your master? The Lord above, or the money that you have in the bank, right? That is the root of all evil, right?
There's no pockets and shrouds, and there's no U-Hauls behind hearses. You cannot take it with you.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I just shared with you that my mom recently died, and on the day she died, she led a rich, full life. She didn't have any money in the bank, but she had her boys. I'm the oldest of three around her, and you know, she had the people she loved, and she had relationships and experiences that she had during her life. And she was a devout Catholic, firmly believed in the next life, just like I do. I just want to take this one for everything it's worth. But that's saying everybody wants to get to heaven. Nobody wants to die to get there. You can put me in that line, right? I'm not afraid, but this is the only life we know. And still, I do think, because when my dad passed away, and he was 60 when he passed away, I started reading books on near-death experiences. And they would all tell the same story as the tunnel light, warm, loving light. Can't even describe how bright it is, knows everything about you. But then you do go through the life review, and they say you can't explain it in human terms, because from birth to death, you see every interaction you've had with somebody, and not only how you felt during that interaction, but how the other person felt and the ancillary effects it had. So one kid was a bully in school, and he said that, he got to feel what it felt like for that kid he was beating up on, and he got to feel what it felt like when that kid went home to his parents, how his parents felt, So that one little pebble that you cast out on that pond, there are certain parts of my life I know that I'll look back and, I would rather not go through that part of the life review. And, they said it's not things that we think are, really the big defining moments, like graduating school or getting a raise or a promotion. It's like holding the door for the person at the grocery store, helping the baby stop crying. Those are the things they said stood out in the life review. But it's also things they said that they could have done that they didn't do, So sins of commission versus sins of omission. But they said there was really no judgment on that stuff. And everybody who went there said what's this one? I remember this story of this woman who was 30, who had a near-death experience at 9 where she drowned and came back. And she said, it was a wonderful experience going to the other side. And she says, the way the way social norms are, when you hear somebody die, like if I tell people my mom died, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, it was time for her to go. But she said when she hears that somebody dies, her first reaction inside is to say, oh, that's great. But she knows she can't say that. So she has to come back with, because she knows where that person is going. She has to come back with, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
You touched a great point on that. I saw a movie in 2023 called After Death. Did you went to see that movie?
I did. Yeah.
That explains a lot, because I believe that even when you hear after near-death experiences, there could be a lot of people that are just basically deceiving other people. But when you see the After Death movie, this guy, he's spent his life researching this topic. And he put together all these scenarios, and I'm like, my God, we truly come to the world to choose good and evil. And if we choose the Lord Jesus Christ, we go through the right path. Or if we choose to be evil and do horrible things like a lot of people do, you're going to have punishment after that, afterlife.
The way they had some people who went to the bad place. And it's
real. And they got rescued by Jesus, right?
Exactly. And their descriptions of that are, we didn't even go through it, but there is one guy, if you want to look it up on video, 23 minutes in hell. And I'm not saying it can scare you into believing in Jesus, but there's no way I would want to spend 1 second in what he was experiencing.
Right. The one that impacted me the most was this Buddhist kid that took his life, right? And he quickly went to hell, and the Lord rescued him from hell and gave him another chance, and now he's a pastor. So I recommend for people that want to experience this, go After Death and follow the director of that movie. because he spent his life
Is that
investigating.
James? I think that's James Moody. Is James Moody? I think was one of the first guys who did these studies. But you see, you just reminded me of somebody who became a pastor. Have you ever read the book "The Case for Faith" of Lee Strobel? You know, yeah. Here's a guy who was an avowed atheist, Chicago Tribune investigative reporter, got married, and 2 years later his wife converted to Christianity, and he thought, oh gosh, here we go, kumbaya. So he set out to prove Jesus wasn't said who he wasn't said who he was, that it was a lie. And by the end of the book, he did say that after interviewing all these philosophers, historians, biologists, that Jesus was who he said he was. And he then went on to write several other books and did become a pastor. But the one thing, from a scientific standpoint, he was interviewing this guy, I think his name is Michael Behe, this biologist, and he said, well, what about, primordial soup and electricity hitting it and life spontaneously forming? And this guy said, well, that's about as likely as a tornado ripping through a junkyard and leaving behind a functioning 747 jet. Okay. And I just love that analysis for everybody who says, oh yeah, just give it long enough and life will spontaneously occur. Yeah, right.
It actually requires more faith to be an atheist than to be a Christian. Way more faith.
I'm telling you, I told you I just got back on a fishing trip of Cuba, and there was 16 people, and I knew one other guy. And then you would every day, not every day, but while I was there, I would spend a different day. There was 2 guys on a boat and a guide. And this one guy, I just don't know why he goes, oh, I just want to tell you, I always say, thank God I'm an atheist. I mean, he comes out talking like that. Okay. I mean, and I didn't try to convert him or anything. And he was originally Catholic, but for whatever reason, it's just crazy that the atheists sometimes, want to put it in your face. But like you said, they have to have more faith in something like multiverses, and this universe is one of many. But it still begets the question of, okay, if there's a multiverse, how was the first verse created?
Yeah.
They can never tell you.
And and scientists, I remember when, there is this new telescope that came on that replaced the Hubble telescope. I think it's the James Webb telescope.
James Webb, yep.
And when this thing started sending pictures, it found galaxies way farther away from the Big Bang. So it found more things inside the deep universe than that scientists believed. So I saw this article from the scientists saying, I can't believe I believed in the Big Bang for 50 years just to discover that this new telescope dismantled that theory. Because now that, it wouldn't be way beyond the time that they thought the universe had.
It's amazing. Yeah, I read somewhere where they now postulate that there's 200 trillion galaxies, each with over 100 billion stars in each one of those galaxies. So people are like, how can God have a personal relationship with all 8 billion of us? Well, I'm like, well, he's keeping track of 200 trillion galaxies with 100 billion stars. And I don't know why we mean so much to him, but we do.
And that's looking outside, but you can look inside. When I started researching how many cells we have in our body, I think it was 200 billion. Now they're up to like a trillion or something. Insane. And every 3 months, every single cell of your body dies and regenerates. So of course it happens every day, but basically every 3 months, you're a brand new body.
Right.
And that's how we age, because the process of duplicating the cells, it becomes old. So the cell doesn't duplicate the proper way. So we grow older. But imagine, do you know that there are scientists that know that a cell has the ability to bind itself with another cell, and it has the choice to do that? So basically, all our organs, everything that we do inside of us is a universe. Imagine 1 trillion cells forming your organ, giving you life.
No, just all the stuff that we do. I'm sitting here breathing, not aware of it. My heart's pumping. I'm not aware of it, but all this stuff is going on inside of me, and it is pretty incredible. And I'm sure, David, like me, you look back over your life, and it's like, how did I get here? And then when you do look back, it's like a quilt that was being made, but you couldn't see it as it was being made, and all those people and opportunities that God put into your life that, a lot of them, like, people say, oh yeah, that was just a coincidence that I met my spouse here, or that I got this job here. No, it wasn't a coincidence.
Psalm 139 says it very clear. If you read Psalm 139 in the King James Version, it actually says that there is a book written with every single day of your life. Is the plan, the plan of God for your life on this earth. Now, you have a choice whether you want to follow that book or you want to write your own book. And that's when people actually go astray. But everything is there. Like your wife, right? My wife. Did you know that I went to computer science school? My wife was already registered to go to business. And her mom convinced her a month before to go into the computer science route. A month before. And she was there just because she wanted to offer her mom just to go with me. Isn't that insane? Like, she would have gone to, I wouldn't be here.
What are the odds of that? What are the odds of that? Yeah, so it really is
astounding anymore, right? Like, it's just, it's God's way of getting us back to our path. And every time I make mistakes and I went off the book written about me, I suffer greatly. But then the Lord, with all his love, brings me back, like the prodigal son, right? Brings me back into the right path, the one that it has been written for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know that many Bible verses, but Romans 8:28, all things happen for good for those who love God and who are called according to his will. And, you say all things, but that means even things that we perceive as bad things, ultimately are there for us if we believe in God, and that, it's a journey along the way, and what we might perceive as bad, or everybody else does too, whether it was our fault or somebody did something to us, ultimately in the end, God took the ultimate worst thing that could happen and turned it into the best thing that can happen, right? And what's the worst thing that can happen? Deicide, us killing God. Right? We did that. That's the worst sin ever committed, you could say, the worst thing that could happen to humanity, and he turned it into the best thing that could ever happen.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? That he became human just to die for us, so we don't have to go to hell. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. I mean, when you think about it, if somebody owes you money, they have the opportunity to pay you back. But let's say the debt is so great, they can never, ever pay you back. What's really the only thing you can do if you know they can't pay you back? You just forgive them, right? And our debts are so big that we had to have somebody else forgive them in a big way, So it amazes me that, the creator of the universe basically actually gave himself amnesia to come down here and be one of us.
Yeah. It's not like
it would be like you or me deciding to be a slug. I mean, that's what it amounts to. And then the us. I read a book. I read a book one time, David. Maybe you read it. Lord, Liar, or Lunatic. Okay. Jesus was one of those three. You get to pick. All right. Because you could say he was a great teacher, and prophet, but if he really was that, wasn't he a lunatic by saying he was the Son of God and he was going to rise on the third day? Right? He was a lunatic, or he was a liar and he lied about it. Okay. Or he was Lord. And the other thing that really, when anybody is talking to me about faith and how do you have such faith, there's a whole bunch of reasons that I do. And one that, I read about, and it really hit me. How many people will even die for the truth? Well, if those disciples didn't see him rise, didn't believe in him, and every one of those died in a horrific way, would they really all die for a lie?
Yeah.
No, they would not, at all. It was only when they saw him and believed in him, So I've got 3 kids, a daughter and 2 sons, and raised them in the faith. But you do everything you can, and then they go out and do their own thing. And I got a daughter who is steeped in the Catholic faith, and her kids go to Catholic school. Her husband, my son-in-law, is amazing and belongs to a Christian men's club. And then I got my 2 sons who, are still trying to find their way. And, it's frustrating because, you raised them all the same, but how come it is these 2 didn't turn out in faith the same way that my daughter did? And they, by the way, they do statistically say the chances, if the head of the household, the male, is practicing their religion on a regular basis, there's a 60% chance that the kids will carry on that faith. If they're not, and they stop going or whatever, then it's about a 10% chance. So,
Chris, there is a Bible verse that says, "Me and my house will serve the Lord." All you gotta do is pray for them. I have a prodigal daughter. She was built in the faith. She was Christian, and now she's lost. But I truly believe that the Lord will bring her back the way I was lost. I got lost for 20 years.
Yep.
We have to have the faith and the power of prayer. Like the Lord enjoys hearing his children ask, especially for those things. Bible says, "In everything that you ask in my name, my Father will give it to you." And he's talking about the stuff about salvation for your kids, right? Remember that the thief in the cross, right? He was completely away from the faith his whole life, but in the cross, he repented. And he asked the Lord to forgive him, and he got saved 5 minutes before he died. So I truly believe our children will be okay if we keep praying, we keep interceding for them. And go back to that book, like you say, Romans 8:28, and the predestination is true, and they are your children, therefore you and your house will serve the Lord.
Yeah. No, it's that's all we can do is pray, and it's amazing what it can do over time. And it doesn't always work on our time, but it oftentimes works on God's time.
Yeah, it's God's timing. Sometimes I suffer and I pray for my daughter, and then I have peace because I know the Lord will bring her out at the right time. The same he did with me. I ended up in the occult, and I ended up doing transcendental meditations and stupid things like that. Even taking psychedelics, try to become more spiritual. And the Lord rescued me from that by the power of prayer. My wife started praying for me. She made a bunch of people start praying for me, and I got delivered, and my eyes were opened. So, if anything, this could actually be my testimony, could be of hope that your kids will be okay.
Yeah. Did I ever send you those? I call them Chris notes. All those notes that I put down that of sayings that I've heard over the years, and I'm looking for it right now, David, because there was one thing. If you talk about sin or somebody coming back, see if I can find it. Let's see. I hope I can find it. No. I can't find it, but I think I can remember it. Sin is wanting what we don't have and having what we don't want.
Having what we don't want.
Yeah. And it's, some people will take the way out with alcohol or drugs. It's trying to experience what, if they would only go about life in the clean way, they could find that way, but it's so elusive, though, and it's just so terrible. I was on this Cuba trip, and I was talking with this one guy who's 35, and he was telling me how one of his friends died by doing one line of cocaine, which had fentanyl in it. And he took one line of cocaine. He was 32 years old, dropped over dead.
Wow. What a waste of life, right?
Complete. Yeah, it's so sad. And what a way to meet your maker too.
Yeah, I know.
Right, that's in the water. I don't want to go out on a negative there. I'm just saying that, thank God we are who we are. And, they say if you were standing around 5 people and you knew, their story, you wouldn't trade with any of them. And I firmly believe that.
And also, Chris, that brings me to the point. We are not allowed to judge anybody.
No,
we become so judged, especially if we think we're spiritual and that. I used to suffer from that, saying, "Oh, this person is this and that." No, you don't know their background. You don't know what childhood they had.
Yep.
The Lord is the only one that judges, and actually, it's the Bible too, right? It says, take a look at what you have on your own eyes before you're actually telling people to clean their own eyes, right?
Well, one of the stories in the Bible that tears me up still when I read it is the one where they're about to stone the prostitute, and Jesus says, let those of you without sin cast the first stone. And one by one, they drop the stones. And he's sitting on the ground. They still don't know what he was writing. He says, "Woman, has anyone here condemned you?" And she says, "No." He goes, "Nor do I." I mean, he could have thrown the stone, right? Easily. Did he do it?
Yeah.
No, never sinned. He could have hit her, but he didn't. He said, "Okay, go and sin no more."
And that's where it should, right? Learn from our mistakes and go back to the Lord and accept His forgiveness. Accept His forgiveness, because that's another thing, right? Once you make a big mistake, you receive the forgiveness of the Lord, but you don't accept it. You are the hardest person against you. And that bitterness will mess up your life and the life of your family. Once you ask for forgiveness and you are forgiven, move on and don't look back, and you'll never do it again.
Exactly.
It's been almost an hour, and I want to respect your time. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, David. This was great. I appreciate it.
Lord bless you, and have a beautiful rest of the week, okay?
God bless you and your family. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching another episode of Anchoring Hope, where we're shining the light in these last days and hoping for the best, because the best is in the Bible. Please share this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also check other social media for more content. And as always, remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and I love you too.